Yeah, this is me. As Jeff mentioned, I've worked for IMS Research, now I'm part of IHS. I'm based in the UK with a discrete manufacturing group. One thing that's important is that the information that we've got today is purely for machine vision in the factory automation environment. So, in fact, a lot of camera manufacturers do supply to other markets, but they are always quality machine vision, industrial quality products. So it's a very focused area that I look at. Some questions. These are the questions I hope to answer during the short presentation today, and I shall work through those. One of the key things is smart cameras, which is more important to some of you. There's a lot of the processing that goes on in there. First of all, who are we? I think most of you, of course, know who we are. The company's been around for over 20 years, based in the UK, and then we were acquired in March by IHS, based in Colorado, somewhere. I think it's in America. And, one of the plus points with this is it has given us access to a lot of information, a lot of data which is produced throughout the world by the company, which is a $1.4 billion company. So, but we still operate in very much a similar way we have. In fact, our group has not really changed in the way we operate, in so much as IHS hasn't been very much involved in the industrial side, so they pretty well left us alone for the time being anyway. So it's in here. What do we mean by machine vision? Well, machine vision means a lot to a lot of different people, but I wanted to make it quite clear the area that we focus on. And these tend to be the applications that are important to manufacturers and factories. By far the biggest is inspection, automated inspection, quality control. But increasingly some of the other ones are growing very much in use. Barcode reading is becoming very important, particularly in areas where there's a lot of quality control. Tracking that needs to be done. Pharmaceutical areas and aircraft part construction is two particularly strong areas for that. Measuring is often used for dimensioning products, and that's a growing area. And robot control is very much a growing area, whereby you put a camera on the end of the robot, so it's actually looking for a product or for a device or for something. And that's an area which is growing dramatically. We do actually have a report on robotics available as well. I was told to put a plug in for that, so I did, make sure I did do that. So that's the area that we call machine vision, that we define in the reports that we do. These next two slides are a little bit small, they don't, difficult to read, but I really wanted to sort of show is the way that we actually construct a report of this type in the discrete manufacturing group. We look at the market in, first of all, in geographical terms, and I always split out Japan because Japan is very much a different market for machine vision. It accounts in Asia Pacific, it accounts for half the business in Asia. And then we split the market into three main areas, which I'll go into in a minute in a bit more detail. And we then take the rest of the hardware side and split that into various other areas. We're looking at the communications, we're looking at the industry splits, and we're looking at each of the different products. We split them down by some criteria that are of particular interest. Now, most of these segmentations have been requested over the years. We've been doing this, have been actually requested by our own customers. And when we do the report, when we do the research, The first thing we do is we go through a process called scoping, whereby we go and visit our customers and all our prospective customers and say, you know, this is what we did last time, what should we do better this time, what can we change? We have to limit what we do, because obviously all this creates a questionnaire. And if the questionnaire is too long, nobody fills it in anyway, so we have to be selective. But over the period, we've come up with this selection of criteria that we research, and it seems to work very well. How big is the market? Well, in our area of market, it's in the order of around $3 billion worldwide. And about 3/4 of that is in manufacturing. We estimate that that will grow to about 4 billion by about 2016. So it's in industrial terms, that's quite a dynamic market. It's growing quite fast. It's growing faster than the average for industry. Anyway. You can see that there are other industries, as I mentioned, that are covered by manufacturers. Now we're analysing the market from a manufacturer's point of view. So we find manufacturers of industrial machine vision cameras do supply such areas as transport, traffic and surveillance, medical applications. Now that doesn't include, if you like, the scientific applications where there are specialist manufacturers and what have you, but these are industrial manufacturers that happen to be selling to some of these other markets. There is a crossover with some of our other work. We do have a security and surveillance group within the company, and in fact on only 1 or 2 manufacturers is there a crossover, so there's the actual product that's supplied for each of these markets is quite different. If you then take the manufacturing side and split it down, there are 2 main areas, 2 main industries that are very strong in the manufacturing side. One of the biggest is semiconductor and electronics itself, and automotive. They're the 2 big industries really that have taken machine vision to heart on the manufacturing floor. Others include food and bev, packaging, photovoltaics, which is going down the tube at the moment, but we will come back. And robotics, and robotics is a growing area. That mix is changing a bit, but not a lot. These more specialist areas are growing. The portion of the cake which is manufacturing is going down a bit, not a lot. And it's really because people are finding more uses for machine vision. They're also becoming aware of machine vision, and also it's becoming much more cost effective. The price of cameras of actually just cameras themselves has crashed in the last couple of years. You can now buy a very adequate, in fact this is where I get out my little rubber camera, which is when I first started selling machine vision systems with Alan Bradley, when I first went there, the system was the size of a desk. And the cameras were, in fact, the previous presenter, when we saw somebody with a body camera, and it was only 12 years ago. But now this is, I mean, actually after Richard's presentation, his very tiny little camera looks very small compared with this, but this is, if you like, a promotional item that was given away by Bachelor. And in fact, actually one company's come out with one even smaller now, and I've always been impressed because the actual size of the RJ45 socket on the back takes up, you know, about 1/4 of the actual volume of the actual camera itself. That's without the lens. But from a machine vision point of view and from a factory point of view, that's a big development, a big change. And that camera, which is very adequate and will serve many applications, is €299. And it was notable at Stuttgart, for anybody that went there, all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 manufacturers selling a similar kind of camera for $299. And there's a good reason why it's that price, and that's because that's the typical price of an analog camera. Their objective was to take analog cameras out of the market so that everybody uses digital cameras. Product groups. We split the products groups into 3 main areas: hardware, software, and services and accessories. Now this is important because the services and accessories are only those supplied by manufacturers. And it doesn't include all the systems houses and the specialist companies that are around actually building systems. So from a manufacturer's point of view, these are manufacturers that provide such things as training and accessories directly to their own customers. So I need to be clear on that, because obviously there's a vast market of system integrators out there which we don't analyse. They're quite difficult to do that and find them all. On the hardware point of the side, you can see the splits of the products that we chop them into. There's frame grabbers there, also known as video capture cards. But the frame grabber, I'm sure most of you come across the term. It's very much a generic term, but everybody knows what you mean by a frame grabber. We look at lenses, and the important thing there is a third of the market is for what we call smart products. Smart products, I'll go over those in just a bit more detail on what that is. Traditionally, machine vision structure in industry has been a camera, what we just call a plain machine vision camera, connected to a frame grabber, which is almost always a card slotted in the backplane of a computer these days. The trend is to put those into one unit to create a smart camera. And you'll note there that there's sheer coincidence, there's a National Instruments one. I've never heard of it, I don't know what they are. There's also smart sensors. Now the difference between a smart sensor and a smart camera is becoming fluffier all the time. A smart sensor we define as a smart camera which has a single function. So it's designed to do a particular thing, read a barcode maybe, or measure a line or something. Whereas a smart camera is very much a programmable device. It will do pretty well what a full PC system will do, but in a compact unit. That sector of the market is definitely growing, there's no question about that. For a lot of reasons. They're very easy to set up. More and more first-time users of machine vision in industry are using smart cameras. I saw a demonstration by this company, Cognex, some time ago. I was very impressed in so much as you could just point the camera at a device, press the button, and on the devices came along the conveyor belt. If they looked like that, you got a yes. If they didn't look like that, you got a no. And that's as simple as it's become now. This is a smart camera as well. We lump into smart systems things we call compact vision systems. And there's one there. The only difference is the cameras are separate. Okay, so it means you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 cameras into one system. So in fact, it's cost effective if you need four cameras rather than having 4 smart cameras. But it's a growing sector of the market. And here's a typical way it's set up and used. It's like they're analysing urine samples there, but that's typical. You see them bristling all over factories and cities. So it's an important sector of the market, and it's growing. Communication technologies, and a lot of you are familiar with these, but it has a language of their own in machine vision in the factory. Such technologies as camera link, USB 3 vision, gigabit Ethernet vision, GigE vision, they're all technologies which are only used in machine vision, not used in other technologies, in other areas. Gigabit Ethernet, almost all ports are gigabit Ethernet capable, but how many people actually use them at gigabit, nobody really knows. I guess that many of them still use them at 10100, but most of the Ethernet chips they fit in them are gigabit enabled anyway, so that's what they are. There's some up and coming, there's lots moving in this area. Technologies like coaxpress, uses 75 ohm cable, which is dirt cheap. and runs at a hell of a speed. Is a new one there, as you see we've noted. How fast it's going to grow is pretty well unknown really. We estimate it's going to grow, but it's very difficult to put a figure on that at the moment. It has a particularly interesting use, and that's in retrofit, where lots of ships and lots of buildings are actually plumbed already with 75 cable. So consequently you can put co-express on there and increase the speed of transmission by over 10 times without even having to recable the building or the ship or whatever. So it's got some great potential there. Firewire was used, really came along and met a need when it was created with machine vision. It's really only used in machine vision and in servo control. It came along because it was very fast. It's now been superseded by technologies like camera link and Ethernet, and it's pretty well going out of style. Although a lot of people do like to use it, it's a very simple technology to use. And the other technologies includes things like analog. People are still using analog cameras, and as I mentioned, the number of manufacturers of digital cameras are desperately trying to kill off the analog market, but there's still a lot of people use it, particularly in Asia. It's used quite a lot. If I go back, you'll see these the connection here on this compact vision system. Typically, many manufacturers, that's a bespoke technology. They obviously don't want people buying any other cameras, so they actually use their own communication technology. Others use standard Ethernet or one of the other technologies. USB 3 has come into its own in a big way in the last 2-3 years. It's very fast. It will travel along at 5 gigs, up to about 5 gigs practically. There's a vision version of it. There's a USB 3 vision and Gig E vision, and the vision bit basically is they've added some extra functionality in there too, such as camera control or what have you, sort of personalise it for the machine vision industry. Some of the other areas that we look at, there's mono and colour of course, and I mentioned there about 1 and 3 chip cameras, which you might be familiar with. The typical machine vision camera for colour will use a Bayer filter over the sensor, but there is a market for 3 chip cameras, for those who are not familiar with it, whereby you split the beam into 3 primary colours and have a sensor for each. Usually they're CCDs, almost always they're CCDs rather than CMOS chips. They're going out of style to some degree because they're expensive to make, very vulnerable to vibration and what have you because of the prism setup in there. But they're used extensively in print industry, and they're used in food and bev, checking the colour of cookies as they come out of the machine, that kind of thing. Where colour recognition and the accuracy of the colour measured is critical to the actual product. Chip makers like them because of course each camera uses 3. CMOS area and line scan we look at, we analyse that. The vast majority of cameras in factory machine vision are area scan, although line scan is used in such applications as flat panel inspection and anything that's web orientated, where you've got a web of product going along and you're measuring literally a line. In fact, there's one company now that's brought out 3 and 5 line cameras. And I asked them how many lines they've got to add before it becomes an area scan. They just laughed. But there's a particular use for that. It means that they can create very accurate color. In fact, they can create the quality of a 3-chip camera by actually not using the prism. So that's really why they do it. And we look at sensor technology, which obviously is extremely important to a lot of the people here. The vast majority of machine vision cameras in the past have used CCD chips, but there's growing use of CMOS chips because they're cheaper, they're fast, but up until a few years ago they were considered of insufficient quality for most manufacturing applications. Well, that's not true today, of course, because the quality of the CMOS chips has improved dramatically. Also, the CCD manufacturers have seen the writing on the wall, and they've reduced their prices to some extent. But there will always be, well, certainly in the foreseeable future, a use for CCD cameras because they need the dynamic range for certain quality applications. Most smart sensors use CMOS chips because they tend to be a cheaper product. It's also an area that's been encroached on by the traditional sensor manufacturers, companies like TERP and ZIG, who've traditionally just made sensors. They've come up market by making more clever sensors, and the camera manufacturers have gone down market because of the volume. And so that's what I'm saying, it's rather fluffy. In the middle somewhere you get products that are almost the same. We have to put things in boxes in order to count them, so that's how we define it. So there's a trend towards that. So really, just to summarise the trends, as I mentioned, CMOS sensors are becoming more common, and we see that growing over the next few years. The speed at which they'll grow, very difficult to assess really. I think it's probably going to grow faster than maybe I thought it was a year ago. I think a lot of the new cameras that actually are coming out do have CMOS chips in them. There's a much bigger range of them now. So I think there's a good chance that they will grow at a faster rate. And as I mentioned, a trend towards smart cameras. They're simple to use and very small. By definition, you can get them into very tight spaces and very easy to program. Machine vision software, I mentioned on one of the slides, you saw a sector of the market there that we look at, which is machine vision software. Now this is purely software which is designed for use in machine vision only. It doesn't include software that you may get with a camera or you make becomes a part of a camera. So it's dedicated software. It's a growing sector, it's of growing importance. It's also changing some conditions. For example, in 3D, where traditionally manufacturers have used lasers for measuring 3D. They're now using stereo cameras. It's becoming a popular application because the software has been developed in order to create the images required for that. Machine vision lighting is one of the sectors you saw there that we look into. Wasn't many years ago it was quite normal for people to rustle up some lights, an angled poise or a strip light for the lighting, but as the cameras have become more sophisticated, it's become much more important that the lighting is accurate and also replaceable as well. LEDs do run out and they do get broken, and also the speed, the power, the light you get from LEDs has increased dramatically, as we're all aware, and at the same time so is the heat dissipation as well. So heat management of these devices is becoming much more sophisticated. So more and more manufacturers are actually buying dedicated machine vision lighting products. And of course, if it goes wrong, then you can go and buy a new one easily. You've got a part number. The guy that actually set it up might have left or died or something, in which case, it's not so easy. And it can make a huge difference as to the results you actually get from a simple device, whether it's backlit, whether it's side lit. There's a whole range of these lighting structures that are available. The growth in the market, well, the growth in the market is all in Asia, really, not in Japan. I do have a slide, I'm not sure it's on this set, but it shows quite clearly where most of the growth is. As you might expect, it's in China, South Korea and Taiwan are the three main areas, but particularly in China, where they're having to increase their productivity, and we see that growing significantly. So that will be, we expect what we expect to see over the next years. One thing I did want to mention is one of the ways we collect data is by what we call our trackers. Now this is where companies provide us with data on a quarterly basis, which enables us to track the market over a number of years, by quarter to quarter. Now the information they actually give us is not as important as that the numbers are consistent from quarter to quarter, what they're actually measuring, because we're looking at the change. It's the change from quarter to quarter rather than the actual numbers. And it allows us to track the market. So we then provide them, once they've provided us with data, we provide them with a graph of their information that they provided us, and also with a calculated index for the machine vision industry for each of the three main market areas of the world, and the world summary. What it does is it gives them, we don't charge them for doing this, because it gives us some excellent historical data, which is extremely important, which we can follow and track the market. And for them, obviously, it gives them a measure of how well their company is doing against an independent index of the market. We've been doing this since 2006. This is, I haven't got any data on there, but that's 3 million, that 20% line, 3 billion US dollars. Gives you some idea of the perspective. And you can see from 2006 how the market was growing. One thing it did show, 2009 wasn't a very good year. It was a very good year. Machine vision industry in manufacturing crashed, put it mildly. In fact, there were some of one of my customers, their business fell by 80%. They were very much akin to the automotive industry. And, but on average, it was around 40% who lost business during that year, to the tune of 40%, which was one of the highest that we recorded. However, it bounced back quicker than most others. And you can see that by 2010, it pretty well recovered. And was back on a growing trend again. So hopefully it will continue to grow. We see no reason why it shouldn't at the moment, unless there's another big recession. We can't forecast these things. We rather make some assumptions that things will carry on nicely, but it's a growing sector of the market for machine vision.